Welcome to another edition of Access Higher Ed. I'm your host, Christina Wynn, the Dean of Enrollment Management at Berkshire Community College. And today we're talking about a topic in higher education that actually spans beyond just education and goes into the economics and society standpoints from where our world is sort of moving in terms of demographics. I have three amazing guests with me today. I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and we're going to talk a little bit about this notion of the silver tsunami, as it's being called here in our nation and around the globe. So Carl, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Carl Shuster, and I live in Stockbridge, and I'm retired and very much enjoying living in the Berkshires. We have lived here full-time for about 15 years, and before that we were weekenders from the Hartford, Connecticut area for about 20 years, and ever since being here, been very active and enjoying participating with nonprofits, mostly in the area of music, but beyond that also, and most recently with OLLI, OSHA Lifelong Learning Institute.
That's great. Carl, thank you for being here.
Sure.
Howard.
I'm Howard Shapiro, and I've been in the Berkshires for 12 years. We came here to retire after careers, mine in psychology and nonprofit management. And now we're working on new things and new ideas with nonprofits, which we'll talk more about.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. And then my coworker, Jill Sasso Curtis. Tell us a little bit about you, Jill.
Well, I'm the Dean of Community Engagement, Education, and Workforce Development at BCC.
Meaning you have the longest title.
I have the longest
anyone.
title in the entire organization. I aspire to shorten that. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that. I live in Stockbridge. I've been in the Berkshires for about 6 years. I originally came to join the executive team of Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health, and now I'm very grateful to be at Berkshire Community College. I've been in higher education for many years, also worked in the private sector. I have two sons that are at one that's still at Monument Mountain High School and another who's gone off to Mass College of Art. So I'm a busy gal.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. So I'm curious, when we sort of briefed a little bit before the show, there's this notion out there of what we're calling Berkshire villages and virtual villages. And when I hear that term, there's a certain idea that comes to mind, which is actual villages with little homes and people and things like that. But that's not at all what we're talking about today. So can you talk a little bit about this concept of virtual villages? It's nationwide, as I understand it.
Yes.
Where it originated and how that actually fits into what we do here in our region?
Well, Berkshire villages in the Berkshires are Berkshire villages, and the name is really Villages in the Berkshires at this point.
Got it.
Is a concept that is not new to the country. It began about 15 years ago at Beacon Hill Village in Boston, which was the first, and now there are over 200 and another 120 in development. The concept is not, as you described it, a village and another little village next to it.
Right.
It is really people staying in their own home who wish to remain in their own home as they go into older adult life. They look at the opportunities that are out there for senior residents, assisted living, and really prefer to remain in the home that they've had for whatever period of time. And the aim to do that is to provide the services that enable them to stay in their own home. Those might be volunteer services provided by a group of individuals who the village puts together and identifies to provide home repairs, transportation services, or other kinds of services. There's a national organization called the Village to Village Network, which is now providing a good deal of technical support to villages as they develop.
Wow, that's great. So how did you come to be involved with the Villages of the Berkshires, Carl?
Well, it's a little bit of a story. I'm mostly associated right now with OLLI. I'm vice president of OLLI. And OLLI, in its strategic plan, which it's had for about 3 years now, which Howard and I both worked on together, said that we don't want to be just an organization that gives courses to seniors, but we have over 1,000 members of OLLI now in the Berkshires, and they are extraordinarily talented people, asset to the community. And what could we do with this major resource, which was really being underutilized? And so one of the things we did in our strategic plan at OLLI was to put some language in there about the fact that we want to give back to the community. We want to explore ways to do that. And so we've embarked over the last 3 years in different ways, including a mentoring program with Berkshire Community College. And now we're beginning to explore the possibility of partnering with the Village to Village effort in the Berkshires, because we feel that's something that not only will our members benefit from, but stand to contribute to in a major way.
Mm-hmm.
I might mention, Christina, that in most villages around the country, there are social and educational programs, but none of the other villages have utilized a relationship with the OSHER programs, the OLLI programs that exist. We felt that we had an excellent program here in the social and educational area,
Right.
that we didn't need to duplicate that effort. And so we looked at this partnership. We talked with the national organizations, the OSHER national organization, and with the Village to Village network to learn whether there were any other examples, and there were none. And they are looking to us now as a pilot for this that might be used nationally.
So you heard it here first, folks.
That's right.
We've got one of the first that's starting here in our own community, which is incredibly exciting.
I think it's also very important to understand that not only OLLI, but also the effort to establish this village concept in the Berkshires is grounded in the 2-year study that was done by the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission that ended up with the age-friendly report that's going to be launched on April 17th here in Pittsfield. And in that report, it was determined that older adults in the Berkshires, to the figure of 90%, wished to age in place. And the major question that results from that, and all of us do want to age in place, almost all of us, the major question is, how can we do that? What services do people need? What is it that drive people into retirement settings and homes and special facilities for health care prematurely? Are there services that could be rendered that will allow people to stay in their homes until they absolutely have to make a move to another setting?
Right, and the term aging in place really is used to describe individuals who want to remain in their homes.
Yes.
Correct.
And to be able to live their life exactly as they always have with those support services so that they aren't going into other facilities if they so desire not to.
So the question that faces almost all of us is, how do we go about accessing those
Right.
kinds of services? Where are they? What are they? Is there one number or one place we can go to find the kind of services that we need? And what kind of array of services might be available? And so we have come up with a long list, which Howard has, of volunteer opportunities for people to fulfill the needs that people have to raking. Maybe their lawn needs to be raked. They maybe need help getting their trash to the curb in the morning.
I see.
They maybe need help because they're not feeling well to have their dog walked, or any of the major and minor services, maybe somebody just to come over and play cards, to deal with the natural isolation that occurs
Right.
amongst 40% of the adults in the Berkshires in the study said that they felt isolated from their community. So there's a major unmet need that this village-to-village concept seeks to deal with.
And when you think about the Berkshires as a county, we're a very long county, right? So
Yes.
there's a lot of clustering happening in sort of cities and major towns, Lee and Lenox. But what about those folks who are in Hinsdale or a little bit further out and maybe don't have those services? And how can they benefit from using a virtual village?
So that's another unique piece. One of the models that we saw from Village to Village Network was what's called a hub and spoke. And we're looking at that as the model that we will use here. And the idea would be that we'll create a nonprofit organization that will be the hub. We'll have all the administrative arm of it. But local villages will develop in the communities where they are. And those local villages will identify the members and volunteers who will become part of that hub. And they'll develop the services in their community that are needed in their community, some more rural than others, and some needing more assistance than others. So it'll be a broad spectrum that we see.
Right.
And another element to this that is unique here is that not many of the villages that have developed have been intergenerational. And we're looking at that as a model. We're not limiting the age that someone can become a part of villages in the Berkshires. And we're also looking at the high schools to offer help by identifying kids in the schools who would be willing to be volunteers.
Interesting. So what was the point that made you feel like you needed to be intergenerational, particularly in our region? As you think about, the Berkshire Eagle just did an article and that you all sent to me that indicated that the region is aging. So what's the intergenerational, what's the benefit to doing it that way?
I can speak to that. My wife happens to be an early childhood education expert. She has a doctorate and she taught in that field. So she's always alert to the possibilities of ways in which young people in our society can have their needs met. And if we are to be an age-friendly Berkshires, that means dealing not just with the needs of older people, but younger people also. And so we're looking to find ways that older people might be able to assist, for example, with children coming home after school. Maybe there are older people who could be volunteers to help meet them at the school bus, that kind of thing. So that we're going to be seeking ways for the older people to assist younger people, and in some cases, younger people to help provide some of the needs in their area, their neighborhood, of the older adults who live there.
Yeah.
So there are opportunities to serve all age groups.
That's great. That's a great point. Now, Jill, turning to what you do at the college in terms of community engagement, workforce development, how do you see the work that you do every single day tying into the villages in the Berkshires?
So my division of the college, my team and I sat down and developed a mission statement recently, and our goal is to enhance the quality of life and the economic prosperity of the Berkshires through lifelong learning and community leadership. So it very much fits within that umbrella. And I oversee the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at BCC, and I sit on the board, and I also sit on the steering committee of the villages in the Berkshires. And we are always trying to find ways to support the community around us. We're not just about a traditional associate degree and engaging those students, but engaging the entire community and supporting their well-being. So this is very exciting for me, and actually OLLI is one of my favorite responsibilities in the college. I love the people, the social aspect of it I think is so important. Especially as you have more time on your hands and you can spend time with friends, right?
Right.
And I'm a lifelong learner, so I just love watching everybody. I wish I could go with them actually, but I'm working. Go to the classes.
Soon enough, Jill.
Soon
Let's
enough,
not
I know,
push
yeah,
it.
another 10 years. But I love seeing them, come into the building and go to classes, and it's the quality of the educational opportunity is amazing.
Yes.
So to share that on a bigger scale through villages in the Berkshires, and again to uplift the quality of life. I mean, I sit on, for example, a couple task forces that look at health and well-being, and as Carl said, one of the most important things or one of the most important issues is isolation, not just for older adults, but for everybody. So imagine, the benefit to the folks that participate in this, whatever age they are, bringing them together, creating community. I mean, really, we're going back to, it takes a village. That's what's missing. Everything in our society is so disconnected at this point. This is a way to, through technology, actually bring them back together and let them have human interaction.
But what you just said is so interesting, because you said that we are disconnected, but using technology we can become connected, which, as you think about technology and the use of smartphones, and it's, the proliferation of that has been just amazing. So as you start to think about villages in the Berkshires and virtual villages and OLLI, how would someone start to get involved? Are they going online? Are they if they want to be connected, what should they be doing?
Well, right now we don't have a website, but we're working very quickly to develop one, or at least the beginning of one, so that people have a means to connect.
Yeah.
But we've been going out into the community and meeting with people and learning from them their needs, as well as letting them know about what we are trying to do. We have a meeting on April 14th in South County, down at the BCC campus in South County, where we will be talking with people from the communities of Great Barrington, Egremont, and Alford. We had a meeting with the NAACP as well. We are looking at other communities that are willing to offer us opportunity to come in and present so that they know more about it. But people can contact me. We've developed our first newsletter, which just went out, and we could send that out to people to let
Very
them know where
cool.
we are and how we're doing. And so if anyone wishes to, they can contact me, and I know you'll provide that information
We
to
have a
them.
number. Our folks in the studio are going to pop that contact information for Howard, email and phone. So whenever you folks back there doing your magic can flick that on, that would be great.
That's great, thank you.
Absolutely.
I think it's important that it be understood that we are at the very beginning of launching this effort, and it's large and daunting to do something like this. In some ways, it could be viewed that we are attempting to do what government has not stepped up to doing, that this is a kind of function that ordinarily governments deal with. But in our case, we're just getting tired of waiting around for the government to step in and help the seniors who need the help. And so we're starting this out. We're trying to get it going. It needs funding. It needs volunteers. It needs people who have time to devote to a purpose like this. We have lots of needs, and we have lots of openings for people who would like to participate.
That's a great point. Well, you had mentioned, Howard, that you had some conversation with folks about their needs as it relates to aging in place, isolation, education, those kinds of things. What are the needs that you're hearing about that are coming up in sort of themes that people are sharing with you? Like, I need these things, or it would be nice to have these things.
The biggest one that comes up most often is transportation, partly because it's not readily available from the public point of view. And some people are having more difficulty being able to travel, particularly in the evening times. They need some transportation, and that's probably the least available time of public transportation that's available. But even during the day, people have some difficulties, and so that's what we're hearing is number one. The second, which has already been raised, is the people who feel somewhat isolated in the community, that they're not aware of or involved in activities in the community. And it's one of the major pieces of the Age-Friendly Berkshires, one of the 8 domain areas, is that whole area of community engagement. And so we see that as another issue. And that ties in a little bit with the transportation again, just to be able to get to someplace and participate. We've heard that from OLLI members as well, who have indicated a desire to take a class, but uncomfortable with traveling some distance. So that's number one. The other thing that we hear a lot about from people is repairs in the home, just simple repairs. And I want to also point out, Christina, that we're not only looking at volunteers, we're also looking at the current service providers in the community, talking with them, sort of doing our own review of them as services, and then also asking them if they will provide some reductions or discounts to our members. So if it's beyond what a volunteer can do in terms of home repair, if it goes beyond changing a light bulb or some simple plumbing and needs a plumber that is really skilled, then we're looking at some of the service providers who can assist us in those areas.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because you could build sort of a consortium of
Correct.
trusted professionals who you can provide the services when somebody has a situation come up that they weren't prepared for.
That's exactly right.
I think one of the most important things we can do is to make it a one-stop shopping opportunity for people. In many cases, it's not something that we have time to prepare for. All of a sudden, a loved one, a friend, a family member, sometimes from a great distance, will need major help in the home in order for them to be able to stay in the home. And when you think about how you would put together for yourself or for a loved one the kind of multiple services that people need when they no longer can get out of the house, it's complicated. You need to contact an awful lot of players. So we're hoping to make this the place where somebody like that could start and receive the help and the information they need to put together a program for themselves that will enable them to stay in their homes and not be catapulted into a setting they really don't want to be in.
Right, yeah, that's all uncomfortable for many reasons.
Yeah.
You talked about this Villages movement being national.
Yes.
Can you talk about or provide some examples of communities that have done it and done it really well, and what were the pieces of their programs that you'd like to see us incorporate here in our region?
Well, we had a wonderful opportunity, Carol and I and our wives and some other people from the community, in having someone come here who was a friend of a Berkshire resident who had developed Newton at Home. That's what they call their village in Newton, Mass, just outside of Boston. One of the unique things I noted that they did was a relationship they built with their community hospital. And in that relationship, they provided assistance to people who had been released from their service at the hospital, but going home, and needed some additional services. The Newton at Home came in and provided those assistance, and they saw that readmissions to the hospital were significantly reduced as a result of the village's involvement with those people. So that was a unique example. The other that we also studied was Marin County in California. And the reason we studied it is because it's one of the few other hub and spoke models that is out there and that has been very successful. They currently have 10 villages associated with their hub in Marin Village, and it has been wonderfully successful. The other thing that we saw, and this I think relates to the issue of isolation, is the ones that have developed social relationships, whether that's people going out to the coffee shop that's near their town and meeting together, or whether that is somebody coming to the home and just being a visitor in the home and someone who can spend some time with someone who is having difficulty getting out.
Yeah, I mean, all of those things make for an incredibly complex community environment. And
Right.
It's so great to hear that there's organizations like yours and others that are dedicated to finding ways to help people feel good in the stage of life where they should be able to enjoy themselves, right?
Right. One of the things that I think has been remarkable is Villages to Village Network, which I mentioned earlier with a national organization, is online and has only been in existence since 2012. They came as a result of Beacon Hill Village, who was getting enormous numbers of questions about how they developed their village. What I find remarkable is they have a forum online where you are getting information every day, questions from other villages that are asking how some other village did something. And this has been so very helpful to us looking at it, as well as to all of the villages learning from each other.
That's great. So as you think about this really exciting initiative and the number of people that potentially could be involved here in our region, what is your goal for the next year? Where do you see this being in 3 or 5 years?
Whoa.
Well, we can take a run at that. Well, our goal is to establish a nonprofit corporation and begin to collect the volunteers and so forth that we're going to need to provide the kind of services that we hope to, and to obtain some funding, and as soon as possible be able to afford to have a full-time paid executive director who will actually pull it all together and operate it in an efficient way. The Berkshires, there's a lot of territory to cover and a lot of individual towns with individual needs and their own councils on aging and so forth. There are a lot of players. So it's a major undertaking, and I think we will need some professional help in that way. But the next year or so, we're going to be engaged in launching what is really a major undertaking.
I'd like to use the business model for a moment.
Please
and say
do.
that from a point of view, our customers will be the members. And from that perspective, I also want to mention that we're not talking about exorbitant prices to be a member.
Right.
We're talking about pretty reasonable costs for most people. Although there will be people who are on fixed income who won't be able to afford that cost, and we're looking at scholarship type availability as well. So as a customer, we're also looking at what is our product, and our product is the volunteers. So key to us in our development right now is identifying as many people who are willing to be volunteers, whether they'll be members or not. It's quite reasonable that they would be a volunteer and not be a member
Sure.
if they choose to. So we're really focusing on that effort.
That's great. That's
Another
great.
possibility too is to have a system where you could obtain credits as a member, so that if you have difficulty paying whatever the fee might be,
You work
if
it
you are yourself or a volunteer, you would get credits that go into the pool to help cover the costs of your own participation.
That's
So
great. That's another great
that's
point.
another idea that we're going to take a close look at.
Great.
If I look 3 to 5 years down the road, I'd like to say that I would no longer have to be doing this and I could just be a recipient of the services.
I feel like maybe you're transitioning that to Jill, who's sitting beside you.
Yes, exactly.
So you want me to come over and take out your trash?
Right.
Yes, exactly.
That's right. We'd be glad to help.
So, but the other thing that I would also mention is something that we haven't talked much about, but there's great possibilities for us to build in this program opportunities for BCC students to participate as interns in this program who are looking at providing some level of human services or medical services in the community.
Right.
And that could be a real new program developing as we work with BCC.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
great
I
point.
I see some real synergies in that, in an intergenerational way that
Yes.
we can
And
build relationships.
Absolutely.
Ollie certainly would be pleased to have BCC's participation in that way.
Great. Well, thank you, all three of you, for spending the time today. This has been a wonderful conversation. We're out of time. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Access Higher Ed. We'll see you soon.